the interviews which I listened to a couple of years back, you talked about the right side, the left side, and front and back, and movement. I'd like to hear more about that. If that links it in any way to this question of the different attentions, the second and third attention, that would also be an interesting connection to make.
Uh-huh. Well, it's really, back again, it's all about the assemblage point. And this is where the gateway of light comes into, it's a more practical way of assembling a perception of the assemblage point, which is always changing, always shifting, but it becomes kind of sedentary as our perception becomes acclimated to a solid world to the exclusion of other worlds. It becomes, it can become, it can become fixated at a particular point. Worst case scenario is it becomes fixated in the gap, right? Then that really is a can of worms to be able to unravel. But for most people, they are quite happy at the place of reason, located between the shoulder blades, at the area of the heart, right? The heart is considered by some the assemblage point, but it's really not the assemblage point. It's really just the place of reason, the place of emotionality, the place of mentality, the place of where reaction becomes more acceptable than action. Right? So you're mostly the unknowing effect in this area, right? So you are being influenced by your emotions, by your mind. This is the area of clarity. This is these emotions, these ideas want you to believe them, and you are very predisposed to believe their validity. But so again, these are like the influences. See, the external is already internalized. It's already, we have already accepted the external emanations into our energy field, and we visualize it as internal. So that's how clarity is so intoxicating. So
I think I know what you mean, but can you explain that a little bit more, how the external becomes internal and how that is related to clarity?
Yeah. Well, we figure our thoughts, our ideas, our perceptions, and our emotions are authentic, when really they're not. Our seeing is more authentic, because our seeing sees with lucidity. It sees where these forces are coming from, that these forces have been internalized. Now, they've been internalized by the, basically, the assemblage point being fixated at the gap, right? And that orientates it in the human form. It isolates it in the human form. So there's no other influence you're getting except the human form. So with the process of meditation, you're getting a little more out of it, because you're looking objectively at your thoughts and emotions, your perceptions. And really, they are just objects, just like the human form is an object. But then, what is the object of the whole thing? Is that it's all subjective. So, and it's the fact that we can't see the cause, that it's so dominant, right? Being able to see the cause, you need to be lucid. You need to be able to see through these structures that are influencing you. So the we need to shift from the place of emotionality, of mentality, and perception into another field. We need to shift into a field that is composed of awareness, energy, and intent. Because these are more core to our being. This is what our being is constructed of. So we don't really understand awareness. We understand perception, but we don't understand awareness. We understand. We don't really understand energy. We understand being influenced by energetic forms, but we don't really understand energy. We don't really understand intent. We understand intention, and many times intention is well-meaning, but rarely accomplishes its task. But we don't understand intent, right?
Intent can be a transpersonal force, right?
It is a transpersonal force. It's the animating principle of will that is behind everything, right? So you cannot have anything, any thought, any dream, any emotion without the force of intent connected to it. So, but what the Toltecs were most interested in was isolating this force and not having it being sucked into the human form. Right? They wanted to experience it in its more pure form. That way, you know the principle of animation, right? And that's a life. The principle of animation is a life-giving energy. That's how energy is given to matter. It's through intent. Originally, in the sea of energy, we're born as a single luminous fiber, right? And it's just a little strand of intent with hardly any awareness. So as this single luminous fiber evolves, right, it grows more awareness. It develops a glow around it, right? And it develops the ability to move. That's energy, right? So, and it evolves more elaborate structures to be able to feel what it's feeling. So our life form, the individual sentient being, is a very unusual life form because it was created to be self-created. Right? So we always have this mirror in front of us. Right? So this mirror can either work for you or against you. So it's just like it's the tree of knowledge of good and evil. Right? Or better yet, the tree of knowledge of what works for you and what works against you. Right? Because there really is, good and evil is like a human invention. Right? Good and evil don't really exist in the natural universe. They are moral considerations out of individual sentient beings who are influenced comfortably or uncomfortably, right? Evil makes you uncomfortable, right? Good makes you comfortable. So that's what we're looking for here in a nice sort of ego state, right? That doesn't need to grow much, right? And just to be protected from those, external realities. So it looks for a comfort zone. So as a result of looking for a comfort zone, it makes an inventory, right? What makes me comfortable and what makes me uncomfortable, right? It tries to accentuate what makes me comfortable and eliminates what makes me uncomfortable, right? And that's what our whole existence is focused on, right? So, but in a sense, what makes me comfortable eventually could make me uncomfortable, like the eating of junk food. It's very comforting, while you're eating, very tasty. But eventually, it will make you fat. It will give you cancer. It will give you heart disease. So eventually, what is making you comfortable will make you uncomfortable. So really, that inventory is very dysfunctional. So the warrior tries for a different sort of inventory, right? It's rather what makes me strong and what makes me weak, right? And so if you discern what's able to make you strong and what's able to make you weak, you can eliminate those things that make you weak and elaborate on those things that strengthen you. And so this was the issue with the eagle's emanations, because the eagle was progressively making you weaker and weaker. So in order to build the internal emanations, you had to understand what really made you strong. And that's a rather progressive thing, because what makes you strong now will not make you strong all the time. It has to be a progressive involvement. You have to understand further and further through discipline, through training, through a warrior's discipline and training, how to increase your strength. Because that deteriorating effect of the ego and the gap in your energy field is putting you in decline. So you always have to increase the forces of strength to be able to deal with the decline of vitality. So this gave the seers an understanding of what power was all about. Power attacks you at your greatest weakness to reveal that in awareness, but supports you at your greatest strength to utilize that as a strategy. Right? So strategies are very important. Right? And this awareness of what power, how we interact with power, allows you to progress upon a path of power, and allows you to understand the dragon's emanations. Because what seers were able to do was to eliminate the what weakens you so much that the internal emanations became so strong that it was able to surpass the human form, right? Be able to see beyond, right? And evolved evolutionary possibilities that we're only starting to get an inkling of, right? Rather than regress into a vat of dark awareness, we can evolve into luminous beings, right? And that's really our destiny. From the original luminous fiber that we evolved from, it picked up a more luminosity. That's what its path became, to pick up more and more luminosity. And that grew will, it grew personal power, and it grew the fundamental understandings of existence that would lead us on a different path.
I got the impression that when you consciously are acting out the transpersonal force of intent, then you become causal. In martial arts, if you are confronted with an aggressor, if you go into what martial arts often style of teaching, blocks or whatever, how you respond if someone hits you, then you're in the effect state because you're trying to deal with what's coming at you. Whereas if you look at that individual in terms of a set of targets, you completely change the energy of the situation, and that other person, they feel it. You become the cause. They can't cast you in their victim role because you're not
We're always using intent. It's always being used. You cannot exist without it. So it's being used, but we use it for the most mundane things, right? Rather, we need to evolve to use it for more non-ordinary things, right? And the first area of non-ordinary things is in the ability to self-generate force, right? And that comes through movement. Movement is the sort of movement, and stillness is the greatest expression of intent, right? To understand what intent is. So, but you need the comparison. You need to compare the stillness with the motion, because intent is both. You'll find there's a motion in stillness and a stillness in motion. Right? So one of the ways that that were evolved to understand intent was to have this comparison. And in a sense, meditation was the origin of developing that. Right? So what we need is the evolvement of a more functional form of meditation. A meditation where you can grow the assemblage point, right, which is the crux of the matter. Right? The dreaming body, the second and third attentions, all the nawal, the tonal, are really remedial, and the crux is the assemblage point. And as I said, the assemblage point was something that was grown, right, out of this single luminous fiber, right, which was the origin of assemblage, because as this single luminous fiber was able to experience more and more, it grew, right? And the luminous fiber expanded. It grew structures of experience from experience, right? So this is the birth of the assemblage point. Right? So we can actually sort of duplicate that moment in a meditation called the Gateway of Light. And it's basically just feeling the energy between your hands, making an assessment of the sensation of the feeling of energy that you get. Or originally you might not get anything. Well, that's a significant perception, and then you might start getting something. That's a significant perception too. Now, to be able to, it's, some people call it just the energy ball, but it's if you really meditate, feeling the energy between between your hands, you start understanding that it's something more. It's a growing force field. You're beginning to understand the forces that emanate from you, and the energy between your hands is a significant form, because how is it formed? It's formed by the pulse, the basic pulse of your wrist, which has an accumulation of pulses that are measurable. right? And it's formed by the meridians of energy, which is represented by each of the fingers. So, in a sense, the field that you're constructing, the assemblage that you're constructing between your hands, right, which is the duplication of what the luminous fiber does in the field of energy. It assembles a sensation of energy to grow, right? So you're forming a unified field, uniting the right and the left sides, right?
This is also when I first saw your goal page, not knowing anything and only having read a few things that you'd written, I just assumed that I was looking at a description of a qigong or an I Chuan stance, because I recognised the description. Actually, when I filmed you, I saw that it looked different. But what I got from the page, I imagined the I Chuan or a qigong stance, and I thought, oh, I know what that is. And then I realised after a little while in an exchange with you that the intent was different, and the intent is everything, because you only have to make a minor alteration to the intent in a simple making a shape, and the whole thing is completely different. So that really shifted for me. But yeah, Wang Xiangjia, who was the founder of I Chuan at the beginning of the 20th century, he did away with a whole lot of beautiful choreography from Xingyi, which he was a master of, and he replaced it with these simple, apparently simple stances, where the practitioner stands for a long time in similar forms, and they hover on the brink of a movement which doesn't come out, so that they feel what it is, the origination of a movement before it actually emerges through the body, and they sit on that dynamic edge of movement. And this is actually very similar, isn't it? Because you're on the brink of something. That's where the stillness is in the movement is in the stillness, is where you're on the brink of a movement which has a strong forward trajectory, but you don't go anywhere with it, but you're just there with it, and because of that then you feel the intensity of it. And then you mentioned the pulses. You know, in Chinese medicine they have the 5 phases: the wood, fire, earth, metal, water. These are all pulses, aren't they, that you can feel in that field. Yeah.
Well, what's interesting thing is life is an interesting a realm of experimentation, and it's quite a big gamble, right? It's all an assemblage. It's a creative assemblage. And so out of the ability to creatively assemble something, we are figuring things out, right? And we are finding applications of energy, of intent, of awareness that really can make changes. And for me, it begins with, the basic energetic structure of feeling the energy between your hands. And that can teach you a lot of things over the time that you are utilizing it, right? Because you're really getting down to the basic fundamental essence of it, right? Of intent, because intent is an emanation of force, basically. It's not a thought, it's not a dream, but it's the what constructs thoughts and dreams, right? It's the constructive element, right? So in the Gateway of Light, that's what we're doing. We're constructing an energetic structure, right?
And if you carry on, if you pursue that, then you have to create something. You have to actually create your own way, don't you?
Yes.
You don't just, not like a one-size-fits-all, I'm going to do what I'm told, and if I keep doing it, I'll become a master of it. It's not that at all, is it? You pursue it creatively, and with the creative imagination, you build a path out of that. It's going to be unique to each practitioner, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah. You're going to discover where intent will take you. and you'll be able to develop that warrior spirit because you have that basic life force that exists from lifetime to lifetime, that is accepting the challenge of existence. That's what it does. And it builds up a confidence that passes all human understanding, right? And so, you are building your own path, basically. So, we try these alternate things that people have discovered to see their functionality. What makes you stronger? What makes you weaker? Right? Not what makes you comfortable and then what makes you uncomfortable. Because many times, if we judge those things, if we judge what we're doing on the merits of what's making us comfortable or what's making us uncomfortable, many times we're not going to proceed on this path. Because building the unified field, building the assemblage point, is going to take us to some uncomfortable places. That's what power is uncomfortable.
Right.
Force is uncomfortable. The non-ordinary is uncomfortable, right? Because it's introducing you to something new. It's taking you a step further. And many times that step is hard to take in the human form because the human form wants to stay where they are or wants to regress.
Absolutely. Yeah, each time I've been to that edge of, facing infinity, I mean, it's such a terrifying spectacle. And I'm thinking if I step forward into this, then basically that's the end of me. That's death. But then, as I'm not ready to go there yet, and then what I fall back into feels like that's weakness. So that you feel your weakness standing, facing this thing which is orthogonal to time and space, this infinity. And you're just there feeling what you're like as you stand. And the only way forward is to get stronger in a way, to have a stronger central channel, to have to be more lucid, to be.
And so as you are facilitating this field, right, you are growing into energy, right? The stronger this field gets, right, the less pronounced the human form becomes as an influence in our life, right? And so we lose that, necessity for reaction, right? We evolve into a realm of action, right? Of being the cause, and at least being the knowing effect rather than being the unknowing effect.
What can you say about this back and front?
I was getting to that.
Okay.
Yeah. So you're unifying the right and the left side that Don Juan talked about, because these are one of the aspects of this is that the right and the left side are coming into balance, right? For the Toltecs, they would go off to the left side, right? That's where dreaming occurred. But we are in the Death Defier system. We are balancing the right and the left side. So we're evolving into a different form. Once the right and left sides are balanced, we are evolving into a field of integration. That's what building the unified field is, delving into integration rather than disintegration, right? So we are making a statement, and that statement is propelling us into another dimension, a dimension of above, below, the front, and the back. It gets a little bit more complicated before it gets simple, as usual, especially with power. Power always gets more complicated before it gets simple, right? So the realm of the front, where perception is isolated, right? Mostly we perceive from the front, right? And so That is the realm of uh, of uh, the realm of being the effect. Right. The back has to do with being the cause. Right. And we're not so much into the back. Right. The back contains the occipital lobes, the medulla oblongata, which is the causal factors in the body's uh, ability to see. The occipital lobes is where you really see. The medulla oblongata is where the body is controlled, right? This is the area of the adept. The adept can control their physical body, all the physiological functions, or at least have access to where it is controlled. And it is controlled in this area called the medulla oblongata, which is the instinctual brain, right, or the instinctoid brain. This is where we're not monitoring it. Our functions are being kept in balance by its electrical potential that it feeds the nerves, right? So we don't have to be aware of our metabolism. We don't have to be aware of our heart, right? But these things are going on.